Mercury is going retrograde in Aquarius on January 30th to February 20th. In this video, we're going to talk about what Mercury in retrograde is and what it means for you based on your rising sign. So what is Mercury in retrograde? Retrograde motion is when a planet appears to move backwards in the sky or in the zodiac chart. And I say appears because planets don't actually move backwards. It just looks that way from our point of view on Earth. And the apparent backwards motion of these planets is due to the relative position of the Earth as we view other planets orbiting the Sun. So at any given time, any planet could be in retrograde, except for the Sun or the Moon, since those planets never go retrograde. Mercury is notorious for its retrograde motion. And that's because Mercury goes retrograde 3 or in some years 4 times a year. This makes Mercury retrograde more of a popular kind of thing or a buzzword in astrology. And most people know about Mercury in retrograde because it happens so often. You can see from this illustration how from the Earth's point of view, it looks like Mercury is looping back and forth a few times during the year. But again, this doesn't actually happen in real life. It just looks that way from our point of view. And this apparent looping back and forth has some real life consequences for us, astrologically speaking. And this time around, starting January 30th, Mercury will be doing that looping motion in the sign of Aquarius. Mercury will enter the retrograde zone, or the shadow zone as some may call it, on January 15th. And it'll be going forward through the zodiac up until January 30th, where it looks like it slows down and starts to move backwards. Then on February 20th, that backwards motion will slow down, and then Mercury will move direct and start moving forward again through the zodiac, finally leaving the retrograde zone on March 13th. And usually every time this happens, the retrograde motion lasts about 3 weeks or so. And overall, during that 3-week period, Mercury in retrograde is a time for us to focus on or pay attention to detail. And because Mercury is the planet of communication, Mercury in retrograde means that we have to take more time to focus on the small details. Take more time to focus on how we express ourselves and express our thoughts and how we communicate to others. And especially if you're a Gemini or Virgo, the signs that are ruled by Mercury, you may have a harder time during Mercury in retrograde because those signs are ruled by Mercury. Those signs are very dependent on communication and analysis. And if you have a lot of planets in Gemini or Virgo, Mercury in retrograde can be tough for you too. And because this retrograde is happening in Aquarius, we have to consider that as well. Aquarius is the sign that rules technology. It rules abrupt changes. So anything that's in the realm of Uranus is affected because of this Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. We have to be more careful when it comes to communication and technology. So don't drop your phone in the toilet during this retrograde period because you'll be pretty upset. So what does this all mean for you? If you want to understand how Mercury retrograding in Aquarius will affect you, you have to find out in which house the retrograde will occur. You could do this by looking at your rising sign. And if you don't know what your rising sign is, I'll leave a link below so that you can go and find out. But here's a breakdown of how Mercury retrograding in Aquarius will affect you based on your rising signs. If you're an Aries rising, Mercury in retrograde will always affect your 3rd and 6th house. Now, these are the houses that usually rule communication and analysis. So you'll have to be very cautious the way you express yourself, the way you communicate ideas. Things may get misconstrued. Be mindful of how you talk to your siblings, or just be mindful about your health and your overall diet. But for Aries rising, Mercury will be retrograding in your 11th house. And this is the house of friendships and organizations. So what you'll see is that this might be a time where you evaluate a lot of your friendships. Maybe your friends may say you don't spend enough time with them, or they may require a lot of your attention more than usual. Either way, use this time to understand that miscommunications will happen between friends. So try not to have any quick falling outs with friends. This is a time of miscommunication. So things may be said that rub you the wrong way, things may be said that rub them the wrong way. Ultimately, this is the area of focus that you'll have to have during this Mercury in retrograde. And if you're a Taurus rising, Mercury in retrogrades usually affect your second and fifth house. You want to be extra mindful about your personal finances and your material possessions. You're more prone to lose things during this time frame or spend on something that normally you wouldn't spend on. So just be more careful there, as you don't want to make any rash decisions regarding your money. And if you have a Taurus rising, Mercury will be retrograding your 10th house, the house of your career. So be more mindful about how you communicate with your boss or any authority figure. Things will be obviously taken out of context a lot, so you want to be extra careful with how you choose your words. For Gemini risings, Mercury retrograde usually affects your self-image. You may have self-doubt, or your body language may be taken the wrong way. People will misconstrue what you say, even more so. You'll also have to pay close attention to your family. Your home life will be affected by Mercury in retrograde. Specifically, this Mercury retrograding in Aquarius will affect your 9th house. You'll have to be extra careful if you're planning any trips abroad or booking any flights. Because Mercury is in retrograde, you might accidentally book the wrong flight, or a flight may be canceled, or you may lose luggage. So I would hold off just to avoid any mishaps during travel. And if you're Cancer rising, Mercury in retrograde typically affects your intuitive ability. Usually Cancers can really heavily rely on their intuition and their gut feeling, but that is not going to really help you during this period. And because you have Virgo sitting on your 3rd house, you'll have to be more mindful about your siblings or any communication in general. And because you're Cancer rising, Mercury will be retrograding in your 8th house, which is the house of other people's finances. If you have a significant other, their finances may affect you. Or if someone owes you money, don't be shocked if you don't get paid.
Can I have my chili Fritos?
Can't have shit, I'm closed, fat boy.
Then give me my money back.
My money.
Mama!
And if you're Leo rising, Mercury in retrograde usually affects your communication with friends. You may get rubbed the wrong way, they may misconstrue your words. So take extra care about how you communicate your ideas. It also affects your personal finances. So you want to make sure you have a rainy day fund ready for when Mercury turns retrograde. And with this Mercury in retrograde in Aquarius, it will be transiting your 7th house. That's the house of partnerships. And if you have a significant other, things will definitely be a little rocky in terms of communication. And you might not understand each other the way you normally would. But be more mindful about how you communicate with them, and be more patient with the way they deliver their thoughts to you. And because it's transiting your 7th house, you may have a lot of unresolved issues that pop up again. So just be more patient, try to understand each other more, and try to work on any resolved issues that might come up. Now, if you're Virgo rising, Mercury in retrograde is that time for you to put more focus on yourself. Put yourself under the microscope and try to identify, things that you could potentially work on. Mercury in retrograde will definitely have an impact on your self-image, and doubt may creep in. You want to make sure to avoid any inferiority complexes that you have, as this might crop up. And with this Mercury retrograding Aquarius in your 6th house, the house of health and service, you'll have to take extra care in how you protect your health, specifically your diet. During this time, your anxiety will be sky high, so you want to make sure you're eating right to help bring that down a bit. And if you're a Libra rising, Mercury in retrograde tends to dig up things from your past. It causes a lot of irritation for dwelling on things that have already happened. You also want to be mindful of planning any long distance trips, right? You want to be careful about, booking flights or going abroad, because you're very prone to forgetting things during this time, and you don't want to forget luggage or something on your way. Now, if you're Libra rising, this specific Mercury in retrograde will be transiting your 5th house, your house of creativity, the house of children and recreation. So you want to avoid any gambling or speculation of any kind. You may want to try some mindfulness techniques to calm your mind, to channel that inner creativity. And if you have any kids or work with children in any way, try to find more patience than usual, because they will test your nerves. For Scorpio risings, when Mercury goes into retrograde, usually you'll feel tension with your friends. You may feel like they're taking advantage of you, or something's just not right. And you may also have issues with personal finances, specifically the finances of those around you, your significant other if you have one. Now, this Mercury retrograding in Aquarius is going to affect your 4th house, your house of home, your domain, your domestic life. So I would avoid doing any home improvement projects or starting any plans for doing something new in the home. Things may not end up the way you really want them to. And if you're planning a move, you may want to hold off just a little bit or take much more care when transporting your stuff, because things are much more likely to break or something's likely to go wrong. And for Sagittarius rising, Mercury retrograde will usually always affect your personal relationships. So if you have a significant other, be very mindful of how you communicate with them. And you'll also have to pay close attention to your work. You'll have to take more time and clarify how you communicate with your boss or your coworkers, making sure they don't misunderstand your message. And because Mercury will be retrograding your 3rd house, all of the things that are usually associated with Mercury in retrograde are going to be exacerbated for you. So if you have any short commutes coming up, you may have car trouble, you may be running late, issues with your cell phone connection or Zoom, if you didn't already have issues with Zoom already, you want to be careful with how you communicate and how you get around. If you have a Capricorn rising, Mercury in retrograde will usually affect any legal matters you may have going on. And you want to avoid any long distance trips. You'll even need to be more mindful of your health. And this might even cause you a lot of anxiety during this time. So you'll want to find ways to calm your mind and maybe focus on some relaxation techniques. Now, with this Mercury retrograding in Aquarius, your 2nd house will be affected. So you want to be mindful about your spending. Keep a rainy day fund ready. A lot of unexpected expenses may pop up, so you want to be ready and willing to deal with those things as they arise. And if you're an Aquarius rising, this might be a very interesting time for you. With Mercury retrograding your 1st house in Aquarius, this might spur a new awakening for you in terms of self-identity. It might be a time for you to completely reinvent yourself, to rebel against the old ways you've been doing things and start fresh, start a new chapter in your life in terms of who you are and how you appeal to others and how you think about yourself overall. This might be a chance to really build your self-confidence. And this Mercury in retrograde period for you will be a time for introspection, to really think about what you could be doing different and how you can refocus on your self-identity. Use this time to really explore yourself and who you think you should be. Reinstill those beliefs about what you can do. And if you're a Pisces rising, Mercury in retrograde typically affects how you react or relate to your significant other. Communication in that area will be tense during that time. You'll also have to pay close attention to any family issues or domestic issues that might pop up. And because Mercury will be retrograding your 12th house, your intuitive nature will be affected. A lot of things coming up from your past may draw your attention away. So you want to be mindful of any deception that might be happening or anyone that's coming around trying to take advantage of you. To sum it all up, Mercury in retrograde is an astrological phenomena that is a frequent part of life. Really, the best thing we can do is to be aware of it. Try to stay ahead of any circumstances that might change. And typically with any Mercury in retrograde, there's a lesson to be learned there. And we want to stay open-minded to it so that we can receive those lessons and do better for the next time Mercury goes retrograde. So if you found this video helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.